Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris, and today I wanted to do an updated garden tour so you could see how much everything has changed around here. Now it's been 2 full months since I did a garden tour, so as you can imagine, things look completely different than the last video. For starters, I don't have any more plants inside. Yay! They have all been kicked outside. Most of them have been planted, but not all of them. But let's take a look at what I have done. This is one of the green stalks we planted partially together. We have some onions down here with some calendula. And then up here, these are some bare root strawberries that I put in. Some of them haven't done that great, but some of them are doing really well. As I turn this here, you can see one of the incredibly beautiful calendula that's flowered. It looks so amazing in this green stalk. Garlic is still going. Not getting very big. I do need to give it some food though, and hopefully that'll help perk it up for the rest of its growing season. Up here are a few plants I still need to get in. I have some marigolds, a couple of tomatoes, and some holy basil. And then this, I don't really know what it was, but it's not doing very good. These are all plants that are supposed to be going into the bed with my potatoes, but my potatoes just don't want to quit. We'll talk about those in a minute. This green stalk we did not plant together, but it is mostly onions and calendula as well. In a couple of places where my plants didn't do so well, I put in some nasturtiums. So there's a lot of nasturtiums up here at the top. These are places that had bare root strawberries that didn't really do very well. I have a few calendula plants that are about to flower on this one, so that'll be really nice to have pops of color. Here is the green stalk that we moved that had lettuce, arugula, and spinach in it. A lot of it has kind of gone to seed. And I replanted some. See, there's some new spinach growing. There's a few new lettuce sprouts in some of these. See some red romaine in there. We had an incredibly hot May. For whatever reason, our May decided it needed to be on average in the 80s. Most days were probably upper 70s to 80, 85 degrees. We even had a couple of days that were over 90, which is crazy hot in May for Western Washington. And my greens did not like it, especially in this area right here, because they get pretty much full sun through most of the day in this space. It was really not the best place for them to be. I have learned my lesson for that. This one will not have greens in it again in this space. But I did get a couple of good salads at it before it started bolting, so it's not a complete loss. This here is the green stalk we did plant together with onions, calendula, and then strawberries at the top. These are mostly the transplanted strawberries from my planters from last year. There's one in here that is one of the bare root strawberries, but I can't remember which one it is. We have a lot of calendula flowering. And we have strawberries finally. Although these strawberries are honestly not the best tasting. The problem is, even though we had that crazy heat in May, June hit and it decided that we needed to have the weather that we should have been having in early May now. So everything pretty much got planted and it was hot and it was happy, and then we decided that we were going to stay mostly in the 60s and sometimes even struggle to get that far. We've had a few days in the 70s here and there, but in general it's been quite cool and rainy. We went pretty much the entire month of May without getting really any measurable rain. That has definitely changed for June. These strawberries, even though they're ripening, and they're ripening at exactly the time they're supposed to be ripening, because we lost all the heat, they're not developing all of those really amazing sugars that make them sweet and juicy and amazing. So they're a little on the tart side. Here we have the big bed, and this, it kind of looks like just a jumbled mess, but I'm okay with that. I have tomatoes planted in rows, one along here, and then on the other side of here along this cattle panel. Back here, I also have a row of tomatoes through here, and I need to put another cattle panel on these T-posts to support those tomatoes. And then over here on the other side, I also have a row of tomatoes. And these ones are actually doing pretty incredible. A lot of these tomatoes are the ones that I hard pruned. Hard pruning is just when they're really small and they're just starting to get their true leaves to them. You cut them off right above the growth node where those cotyledon leaves come out. That forces the plant to grow 2 main vines instead of just one. This plant was one that I hard pruned. This is a terracotta plant from Baker Creek, and this stem and this stem are both coming off the same root right here, and they just look incredible. Now doing this, I do make sure to take off the suckers that are coming through, just to make sure that the plant isn't putting too much energy in those. I want them to put the energy into these vines and all of the fruit that these 2 vines are going to produce. This plant is also another one that I hard pruned. This, I believe, is a chocolate pear. And I have this vine and this vine that are looking amazing. I have several that are like that. This one that's not supported yet, but this is a Paul Robeson. This one I also hard pruned is also a Paul Robeson. Over here I have some Dr. Witchies that I also did the same thing, and every single one that I hard pruned look incredible. I have definitely decided that this is the way to go, even though it's a little bit heartbreaking when you do it, to cut off or pinch off the top of the plant when they're so small. From what I see already, it looks like that there's going to be so many benefits to this, and hopefully I will essentially double my tomato harvest, because each plant is really growing the equivalent of 2 plants instead of just one. So I would consider this, so far, this experiment to be a success. Now amongst all of this, I have the marigolds we started that are bigger really than any marigolds I've ever seen. They were supposed to be petite, and many of these are not what I would consider petite. Some of them are probably closing in on 18 inches tall, which is incredible. I have nasturtiums that are kind of packed in here, and then of course the brassicas are still in. These are the broccoli, and when I planted these, I did not think they were going to do very well. They looked kind of sickly. I don't have any actual broccoli heads forming, but the plants themselves are looking really great. I have my cabbage still in here. I have 4 cabbage plants, and I actually found my very first cabbage worm on this plant the other day. I did a short about it if you want to go check it out. But honestly, it was one of those things where I was kind of irritated because they're pests and they were eating my plants. But I was also kind of happy, which sounds kind of weird to be happy to see a pest. The thing is, I've never grown a brassica plant that got big enough to actually have pests. They always end up getting eaten or dying when they're pretty small. So the fact that these are so big and they're getting cabbage worms to begin with is pretty exciting, actually. It means I'm actually doing something right with these. My purple Sicily, I do have a few that have these. There's one. This one really needs to be picked because it's starting to separate and it's gonna flower. Even though it's not very big, I'm still gonna call it a win. This one in here too is just a little bit smaller than the other one, but still definitely a win because I usually don't get anything. On the other side over there are white cauliflower. I haven't seen any of them start to develop the heads yet. Plants are still going, so I haven't lost hope though. Now my garden in general over here looks crowded, but everything seems to be doing pretty well for the most part. And what's nice about having it so thickly planted is that I haven't really dealt with weeds. My idea of planting densely seems to be working, at least in that bed. Here I mentioned the potatoes. Now in the last video the potatoes were probably like that tall. They were just popping out. And now I have the largest potato plants I've ever had. They're huge and they have these really beautiful flowers, and honestly usually my potatoes don't get big enough to actually have a whole bunch of flowers. I usually have a couple, but nothing like this. The problem with these is that they just continue to grow, which is fantastic as far as getting a great potato yield, but I had planned to have this bed be full of tomatoes, tomatillos, and some peppers through the summer, not potatoes. I had thought I would be already done harvesting potatoes and have those plants in, which is why they're still in their tiny little pots. These are the peppers and the tomatillos that really need to go in there. And then I already showed you the holy basil and the tomatoes. My dog has managed to get in here and kind of trampled a little bit. So I will probably at least start harvesting that area pretty soon, since I don't think it's gonna have much of a chance to grow anymore. Anyway, here's one of the pots of celery, and I threw in some bunching onion seeds from last year. I didn't expect them to do very well, but they're doing all right. My celery is looking amazing here in this pot, as well as over here in this pot. I also threw some bunching onions in this pot, and they are also doing really incredible. And I'm glad I chose the pots for those. Turns out they didn't really need a bed to do well. So I'm happy that I did not take up bed space for the celery and decided to use the pots. I mentioned this plant in the last video, the Pearly Everlasting. We're just starting to flower, and they get really pretty flowers. They're dried a lot and used in bouquets, as well as being used fresh. They have a lot of medicinal qualities too, which we will talk about in another video. My leeks left over from last year aren't doing as well. I was kind of hoping they would go to seed, but I haven't seen any signs of it yet. My Concord grapevine in here is going crazy. It's growing so fast. I really need to get it something that it can climb up. This green stalk I did not have up in my last video. This is one of my pepper green stalks. So I have hot peppers in the bottom 2 tiers and bell peppers in the top 3 tiers. I have it set up that way for this one and for this one. This one has an additional layer up on top that has strawberries and nasturtiums in it, but these are the smaller pockets that don't work quite so well for peppers, so I kept the peppers in the bigger pockets. All of my peppers are doing way better than I had expected them to do, considering the temperatures have dipped. I planted them when it was really warm out, and everything was perfect. Like, it was the perfect environment for peppers. And then the temperature decided to drop like 20 degrees, and they're hanging in there well. They are actually still growing, which I was really surprised about, because I expected them to just kind of stop and say, I'm not doing anything until the heat comes back. But they haven't. I'm pretty impressed with them. This 3.5 foot by 1 foot bed, I think this was here in the last video. I don't remember, but it certainly didn't look anything like this. Our dill is doing really well, and it looks like it's about to send out flowers. I have a yarrow in here that's also doing really well, but not flowering yet. I threw in a couple of zinnia seeds just to kind of fill in the corner because it was looking pretty bare. This here is all cinnamon basil, and then here I have sweet basil with some pansies mixed in for little pops of color. And this one, I absolutely love the color of this flower. I don't know if you can tell, each one of these petals is outlined by just the most beautiful color in addition to its purpley blue. It's just gorgeous. This is a poppy, and I did not realize when these poppies start getting flowers, they actually droop like that, and then once the poppy opens, it pops up. They should be red with black spots, but we'll find out if my memory is correct here pretty soon. The other 3x1 bed over here is also filling out really nicely. The dill over here is looking really great and is at least 2 feet tall now. The yarrow in here is actually looking even better than the yarrow in the other one, but still no flowers yet. I put in some sweet pea vines just tucked in the back here. One of them is doing well. I don't know that the others really are doing much. But hopefully I'll at least have one that kind of provides a little bit of a colored backdrop. This mass is more sweet basil. Then I have a couple other types of basil. I think it's piccolini basil plant is in here, but most of this is blue spice. And then just like the other one, I put in couple of pansies to add little pops of color. This one I also put in some English daisies. You can see those in here. I really did want to add color to my backyard garden this year. I don't feel like I did as well as I wish I had, but there's still time. If I find space, then I may add a few more flowers back here. Just to keep it really beautiful, for one, having the color everywhere, but also to help attract pollinators for my vegetable plants that need pollinators. This green stalk, which is over by the first 3.5x1 bed, I forgot to mention, I planted this out, oh, it was after the last video. This all here in this tier right here is all freckled romaine lettuce. It doesn't look super freckled for the most part, except this right here is looking really nice. Most of it just looks like regular romaine, but it's doing great in this spot over here, and I think that's because it has the shade of this Japanese maple tree. So I think this is the spot to do the greens instead of over there, since this gets more shade throughout the day. The bottom 2 tiers are mostly calendula. There is a few sage plants mixed in here, but mostly I think it's just calendula. Top 4 tiers are mostly different types of basil. I have Siam basil. This lemon basil smells incredible. Just run your hand through it, smell it. It just, if you've never grown lemon basil, do it just for the smell alone. There's some African Newnham basil. There's some black licorice basil up here, and then there's a few lime basil plants as well. And then among these, I threw in a couple of chamomile plants. These will do great. I feel like chamomile is one of those plants that you just can't go wrong with. And last but not least for my deck area is the herb green stalk that we planted together. Now this is filling out so nicely. I absolutely love it. We have all of this beautiful parsley that my husband and I have both harvested a lot off of, and it's still looking amazing. I put some Thai basil up here. This is the tarragon plant that I transplanted. It was super tiny when I transplanted it, but it looks like it's gonna do okay. The ones that we started together, however, are just massive. This one especially. This is probably about 18 inches tall and still going. It looks really, really good. As does the marjoram. It's a little bit floppy because we had some rain that kind of weighed it down. Just like the oregano down here. Both of them are taking off like crazy. I did put a few more oregano plants tucked into different places. They're still pretty small. Right there. Right there. Because we had empty pockets and I didn't want to leave them empty. I also put in some summer savory. This right here, and then this right here. They're still pretty small and just kind of getting going. The thyme down here at the bottom is all doing really nicely. This is also something I think that's going very, very right, and I love having these culinary herbs right outside my patio door. So anytime we want to come out and harvest some, it's super easy. Here is the brand new bed that I built, and I have a video on how I built it. This bed is where I put all the corn that finally got planted, and it is so much happier. It's just going crazy, which I also didn't expect because of course as soon as I planted it the temperatures dropped. But it's looking really good, and I planted bush beans kind of throughout the corn. These I put in a couple weeks ago. Most of them are sprouted. There's a few kind of lagging behind, and I'll plant more in here as well, but I wanted to do succession planting so that I would have a good green bean harvest throughout the entire summer, and they won't all be done at the same time. Since I didn't have enough corn to fill this bed, I went ahead and filled the rest of it up with peppers and marigolds. A lot of these are bell peppers. There's a few hot peppers in here, like a poblano and a jalapeno right there, but most of them are bell peppers. For the bell peppers, I really have to make sure to keep them out of my dog's reach. The one who's always getting in trouble by jumping into my gardens and just ruining them. She really loves bell peppers, so anytime they get, you know, a couple inches, maybe not even that big, she always ends up finding them and stealing them and eating them. So I rarely ever get bell peppers, and I especially don't get big bell peppers because I've always ended up losing them to her. So I'm trying to keep them out of her reach this year to see if I can actually get a good bell pepper harvest. This is my last green stalk that is in the works, and it will all be peppers. Mostly hot peppers in here because this is in a high traffic dog area and I can't protect them. My dogs are less likely to steal hot peppers than bell peppers. My carrot green stalks are doing really well too, for the most part. I have definitely some pockets that are looking pretty bare, like that one and that one and that one, but a lot of them are looking really nice, and I'm hopeful that I should have some good carrots This one is the carrot from last year that's about to flower. Actually, let's pull that and see what we get. So it's not bad. It's not a huge carrot. It's probably 4-5 inches or so. I'll take it inside later and see how it actually tastes. So the last green stalk I have also has carrots on the bottom 3 tiers. And just like the other one, some pockets are doing better than others. I definitely need to succession plant some more carrots through here so I can make sure to get a better harvest. It'll also be nice to have carrots that are ready to harvest at different times, just like the green beans, so I don't have a huge amount of carrots all at the same time when I don't need them. My cilantro, you can tell, it hated the month of May and just bolted. I did get some harvest from it, but for the most part, what I had bolted. So I did succession plant a few pockets that are coming up now. And hopefully within the next couple weeks, I'll be able to start harvesting from that. And I really need to pull these and throw in some other seeds. If you succession plant and start seeds fairly frequently, like every week or two, then you should, the theory is you should be able to get some cilantro throughout the entire summer. I don't know if that works, but we'll find out. This 2x4 bed has the zucchini and the yellow squash, both of which look fantastic and are starting to develop their first flowers and little fruits on them. So that's pretty exciting to see. These 2 plants look really happy where they are. The 8x2 beds are sort of planted out and sort of not. So I have, this is the bed that had the turnips, the beets, and the radishes. The radishes didn't make it, they bolted. I didn't really get any harvest out of them, which was disappointing, but happens. The beets really took a while to get going. Now a couple of the plants are, you can see them right there, and I just left them there since they're not really harming anything. I put tomatoes along the back. These are all Romas, with peppers and marigolds here in the front. These are all bell peppers, again to keep them out of reach of my dog. I have, I think, 1 parsnip coming up. Oh, 2 parsnips. So not great, but 2's better than 0. Here in the corner is where I put the pumpkin. The pumpkin I have planned to grow up. I'll put the cattle panel, actually this cattle panel that's right here is gonna go right across these T-posts right here. And these tomatoes, they're determinate tomatoes. They should get about 4 feet or so tall, so not very big. And I'm gonna have the pumpkin grow up and over the top of this cattle panel once I put it up, and as well as up over the top of this cattle panel in the 8x2 bed right next to it. I had a pumpkin in that same place last year, and I had it grow up and over this cattle panel that this was here last year as well. And it actually worked really well. I was very happy with that. So I thought I would do it again this year, but also have one on the bed that the pumpkin is in so that I can use that bed space for tomatoes and fit the pumpkin up and around the tomatoes. This mess right here are all turnips. And a lot of them I don't think are gonna form much of any kind of a root. But there are a few in here, let's see, like this one right here, that are looking really great. And even if all I get is a few, I'm going to be so excited because I've never grown them before. And I do so poorly with root crops usually in general that if I can even get a couple, that is a complete win for me in my book. This second 8x2 bed, I have all Martino's Romas in here. Also determinate, also shouldn't get more than about 4 feet or so tall. In the front, in front of them, I have a bunch of marigolds, a few onions over here on this side, and then these are contender bush beans. These I planted first before I put beans in with the corn. So these should be the first beans to harvest. And then lastly, over here is my 2x2 bed. The outer part of it is lined with bell peppers, and then I put marigolds kind of around the center of it. And this pepper right here is actually already developing its first bell pepper. This is the first time I noticed it, so that's pretty exciting. So that is it as far as my backyard garden goes. I'll do a separate video for my front yard so you can see what progress has been made up there. It's not as much as I would have liked, but I have to work within the time that I have as well as the budget that I have. But there has been some progress made, so I'm excited to show that to you. For today, I hope you enjoyed the garden tour and seeing how much everything has changed. I'm so excited that you're here with me for this journey in the 2023 garden season. If you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button, and if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can continue to see how everything improves. I will do my absolute best to get more videos done and uploaded. I know I haven't been the best at it, and life has just been crazy. But I will try to keep you a little more updated on everything that's happening here and how all of our plants are doing. So I thank you once again, and I hope to see you next time.